Like one of the first things I learned when I opened Gourmondo is, it just truly doesn't matter how smart you are, how educated you are, how much money you have. It just really matters if you believe in yourself and you're willing to take risks. Risks is key. If you can get comfortable with that, there's so much opportunity out there. And I think that's the exciting thing.
Welcome to the MiiR X Podcast,
a show that dives deep into the untold stories and untapped brilliance of business leaders, creators, and changemakers who are shaping the world around us. I'm Brian Pape.
And I'm Rebecca Pape, and we're the co-founders of MiiR. Today, we have a great episode lined up for you. Our guest this week is a visionary entrepreneur who, over the course of her 25-year career, has truly been through it all, transforming her business from scrappy to strategic. We're so excited to introduce Alissa Leinonen, founder of Gourmondo, a Seattle-based catering company with a remarkable journey that began in the heart of Seattle, just a couple miles down the road from where our headquarters are today. Let's go to our conversation.
First of all, just thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. For those who are listening, Alissa and I have been friends. Gosh, it was pre-COVID when we first met in our forum, right?
It was pre-COVID.
Was it like 2020? Like
right?
2020?
Yeah, it was literally like January 2020. I think we had one meeting before the world changed forever. So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, you all
really
restaurateurs during COVID are heroes because, for us, we can do our stuff mostly remotely. And I'm so excited to get some of those stories out from you about how you not only survived COVID, but thrived during COVID. But before we get into it, share with us a little bit about Gourmondo for those. Take us all the way back to Pike Place,
oh my God.
How many years ago was it?
27 years ago.
27 years ago.
Yeah, it was nuts. Well, I fell in love with the food industry early on. When I was 14, I started as a dishwasher. And I just thought, oh man, it's so fast paced. It's great energy. It's lively. And then, as I was kind of going through high school, I got opportunities to work with, really passionate, dedicated, true old school restaurateurs who were just, so I think committed and invested in the customer experience and great food. And that's when I really understood sort of the magic of the industry. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is something that I always want to be a part of. And at the same time, kind of after high school, I worked all through college and I got my degree in business from the University of Washington. But I thought I really want to stay in this industry. But I also figured I also want to be a mom. I want to have a family. I would like to have some weekends and nights without working. And I thought, I think I want to open my own thing. And I'm 25 at the time. So you don't know what you don't know, right? And you're just like, I can do this. I'll just find a little spot. We'll figure it out. And so I refinanced my car. I had a Jeep, refinanced it. I got $4,000 cash, and I thought, okay, here's the seed money for this company. Here we go. Right. And I had two good friends. We decided, let's create something. But, $4,000, even in 1996, it doesn't go very far. So, we found a little place, a little kind of hole in the wall down on the backside of the Pike Place Market on Western Avenue, 470 square feet, just a small cafe right next to Madame Lazanga's tattoo parlor. Thank God, because she was a great customer. So that was key. But anyway,
awesome.
Oh my gosh, she was the best. And anywhoosie, so that's kind of how it started. There's only 4 tables. And, Gourmondo was born. And then, the first day of sales, because I'd had a business degree, I'm like, I have a business plan. I have a whole plan for revenue. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, doors are open. And then it's like crickets, right? I'm like, oh, this is a problem. So, we wrap up the day and final sales are $36 and 24 is my mom. So it doesn't count. And you're just like, uh-oh, right?
Panicking.
So I realized I'm panicking. So I realized pretty early, like day one, that I'm like, oh, this is going to take some time.
And what did your parents think about you financing your car?
You know what? It was so funny. I think both my parents, they were, so they had divorced when I was younger. And so I was a little bit of a latchkey kid, but they were both like so great about always supporting me. Right. And they were both also, my mom was an entrepreneur. She had started her own design business. And my dad had a doctor's practice. And so they were both kind of very, I think, comfortable with the idea that, you know what, Alyssa's going to take some risks. Let's see what her world looks like. And I think because of my parents, I sort of thought, my mom's an entrepreneur. It just seemed kind of like that might be my next path. And I think it's so interesting because people, I think, are often intimidated about entrepreneurial kind of, journeys and getting
Absolutely.
involved in that. And I think,
Especially at that age. I feel like
yeah,
when I was 25, I'm trying to think what my self-talk would have been at that age, but not you can do this. That would not have been the loudest voice in my head, you know?
yeah. And I think because I saw my mom in particular start her business up kind of from nothing, it felt much more comfortable to me. Like this is what we do. And I think what I learned, like one of the first things I learned when I opened Gourmondo is, I mean, it just truly doesn't matter how smart you are, or how educated you are, how much money you have. It just really matters if you believe in yourself and you're willing to take risks. I mean, risks is key.
Mhm.
If you can get comfortable with that, there's so much opportunity out there. And I think that's the exciting thing. And it's a great path for growth too. Like you learn a lot because you make a lot of mistakes.
Totally.
Mhm.
I think the other thing I learned early on was, I mean, listen, cooking is an art. It's an art form, and it's no different than an artist in general, in fine arts, where not everyone's a Picasso. And so I knew I had a passion for food. I really enjoyed cooking, but I was not going to be, a chef. The level of talent and just sort of like it's in your DNA, right? It's just something pretty special. So my vision when I started Gourmondo was, could I create a place where I could invite and support and create the resources for great chefs to come in and, to kind of work their magic. So, and then I can be a part of an industry that I love. It's fascinating because so many people are like, for example, like, oh, I'd love to be in fashion, but I'm not a good designer. I'm like, that doesn't matter. If you're willing to work hard, you can create a platform, you can create an opportunity for those designers, and then you can become a part of this industry in a meaningful way. So I think just because you might not be the creative force or the creative talent in something that you really want to be a part of doesn't mean you don't have a seat at the table.
I love that. About as close as I come is Brian and I. Well, we both cook and we enjoy it, but we love Top Chef, the show.
Oh, it's fun, yeah.
And it's just amazing to watch all the ideas that come out of those chefs' brains and then how quickly they pull it off. But yeah, no, I love that you knew enough to know, okay, I'm not wired for this.
Well, I think the other thing that I started to kind of understand those early months when I was not making money, and then I finally gave myself a salary of $600 a month, which was kind of rough, and that was pre-tax, right? So I think my net was like 480, but I think the first thing I had to do to kind of get my brain around all this is I was like, wait a minute, I have to redefine what success looks like. I mean, it's not going to be a lot of money. It's just, I thought it might be, but it's not. And so what do I want, how do I want to define success? And as an entrepreneur, we get to pick that. We can color outside the lines. It can be something different. And I also thought, my parents both worked really hard. My little sister and I, we get home and we were latchkey kids, right? And either one of our parents, they didn't come home until 5 or 6 at night. And I remembered you felt a little lonely, right? And so I thought when I started Gourmondo and it was clear that there was not going to be a lot of cash going on, I'm like, I want to revisit and redefine what success looks like. I know what I want it to be. I want to be able to pick up my kids from school. It's something I wanted for myself. I know how hard my parents worked. And I also wanted to kind of recognize that now that it's my turn to kind of get up on bat, maybe my generation can do it a little differently, and kind of create things that our parents wish they could have done, but they weren't able to get outside of certain boundaries. Mm-hmm. So I developed a production schedule and I developed a whole program around all our products, everything being done so that the entire teams could be off by 2 or 3 in the afternoon to go pick up their kids from school. And so you fast forward 27 years later, and 80% of our teams, that's exactly what we do. So that's really, I think, for me, made it feel more meaningful. And I think because the other thing I learned is money does come and go. It's when you feel like you've got purpose and meaning in what you're doing, that's what gets you up in the morning. Because when the money's not there, it's really hard to get up in the morning if you're not really believing in what you're trying to build and what you're trying to do.
How do you react to that, Brian?
I love it. I think one of the inspiring things, there's, we talk about this in our CEO forum that Alissa and I are in about defining your success and what that means. And I mean, I'm kind of taking a page from Alissa of like, success is being able to spend as much time with your family and your kids as you want to, and not being constrained by having to work 60 hours a week for whatever it is. And I think really choosing to define success on your terms is really important, because then it clarifies your mission, it clarifies the time you spend. And I think one of the things I love about you, Alissa, is you scaled your business while working, what, 2 days a week?
Yeah. Well, so what happened was I think I was a very traditional entrepreneur when I started, and I was working 60 plus hours a week, and I wanted to be everything for the company. And I wanted to make sure that, I could sort of lead by example. And I was doing that. And then I ended up getting pregnant 3 years into Gourmondo, and I had a baby. And she was so cute. She was like this perfect little baby, but she was so tricky. I mean, she was really hard. And I don't know if I'm very good at this. This is going to take a lot more effort than I was signing up for. And so out of just sheer like complete overwhelm, I'm like, okay, stop. I can only work part-time until I get this child in order, So I'm working 2 days a week, and I'm doing that. I'm doing it for a month or two, and the company's doing okay. We're puttering along. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I love this. Oh, I'm never coming back full time. I think this is just going to be my jam. This is how I'm going to do it. So for a while, I blamed it on Olivia. And then after that, I just had to come clean. Like, no, I'm just, this is the way I want to run the business. So at that point, I just decided I'm going to go roll slow. But in order for me to only be 2 days a week, I need to focus on what I'm really good at. And I got to let go of the stuff I'm not very good at. So I think the next lesson was it's unrealistic, and it's kind of egotistical to think you can and should be everything for your business. So I need to get out of the way of the company and the things that I'm not good at. I'm a terrible operator. I'm not good at those details. I'm much better actually on the kind of branding and the vision and the creative side. That's where I can kind of help, support the business. So step one was, okay, focus on what I can do really, really well. And then step two is get the best talent you can to really drive the areas where you need support. And then get out of their way. And it's so easy as an entrepreneur to say, oh, I always hire people that are smarter, more educated, more experienced. But it's also, that's step one. Step two is you got to give them space. And that's hard. Sometimes I'm like, well, why you got to do it that way? Well, I don't know about that. Well, I'm nervous about that, and so it worked out. So
gosh, these business principles that you're describing, redefining your success, getting out of the way, hiring people around you to fill in for your weaknesses. I mean, there's something to be said for just saying it's okay to grow slow. We don't have to be the biggest or the brightest or in all the front page news.
I could live with moving slow, because that was the choice I'd made. And I felt like I was being successful. I think that if I had felt like I had to be growing at a rate of, 20 or 30% a year, which some of my friends were doing as I got kind of older and I had more entrepreneurial friends, I think I'd be really disappointed. And I think I'd beat myself up, and I think it would be hard to keep going. But that's not, what was getting me up. So. And in the end, it was so crazy because 20 years later, I was growing by 20, 30% a year. So it all shows up,
Yeah, eventually. Long compounding growth over a significant period of time pays off.
Well, I think success comes if you are intentional, and it may not come on your timeline. And who says you have to be the boss of the timeline? Honest to God, I mean, you keep moving forward and you keep learning and growing, and it shows up. I mean, it really does. You just can't give up. I think if I learned anything, is just don't ever give up.
I love that. Do you have any favorite memories from your first cafe?
One of our big moments in the cafe was probably, we were 4 or 5 months into the cafe. Howard Schultz walked in to get change for $1 so that he could pay the meter for his parking. And he had been a regular at Sustanza, where I was a floor manager. And he was so gracious, and he recognized me. And I know he thought he was just trying to get 4 quarters for his $1, but now he's stuck. You know what I mean? Because he's the only customer. It's high noon. I had just spilled like balsamic on my t-shirt, and I was like, oh, this is really bad. This is really bad. And he was so kind. And he's like, oh my gosh, Alissa, this your place? And like, yeah, it is. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, why couldn't there just be one customer in here? Why does he have to show up at noon and there's nobody here? It's crickets. And he's like, oh, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. This is great. And I'm like, thank you. And he's got his dollar out in his hand. He's like, you know what, God, I got to tell you, I need to grab some of this. Can I get a few of these things to go? And I'm like, God bless you. And so he grabbed a sandwich and then he said, hey, what are the chances? Are you doing any catering or anything? And I'm like, you're not going to believe it. I said, I just got back from Kinko's Copiers and I have my first box lunch delivery menu because I saw these box lunches. I mean, this was like 27 years ago, right? So box lunches was like new to the scene. He's like, well, this is great. Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to get a call from my office. You know, we'd love to do a little catering with you. And I'm like, oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Knowing full well, he was going to get a sandwich. He's going to get his 4 quarters. He'd move on with his life, but what a great guy, right? So I was so grateful. I kid you not, the next morning I get a call from Georgette Assad, his assistant, and she's like, hi, I'm wondering if we could get 50 box lunches for Monday. And it blew my mind, right? I'm
That's
like,
amazing.
I hadn't done more than 4 box lunches ever, you know? We had to shut the cafe down that day. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is so good, you know?
Yeah, you're like, we're gonna need some more bread in here.
It was awesome. Yeah. So he was our first corporate client and he was just wonderful. And it just kind of gave us that little bit of momentum we needed to keep the doors open, literally. So that was a very, very fun, happy memory. It was great. And Starbucks is still a wonderful client 27 years later. So we're very lucky. So it's great.
What a great story. Gosh, I love stories like that where you didn't have the expectation that he would ever follow through.
Never thought so. Yeah, it's crazy.
Alyssa, I'm just always in amazement of you and your perseverance in 27 years, going from, $36 on the first day to building, a fairly large business. And, I think one of the things that I'd love for, our customers and audience and listeners to hear is, you've built this for 24 plus years and COVID hits.
Oh
and you all in the restaurant industry, and especially, serving corporations no longer showing up in person. How the heck did you make it through COVID? I mean, we shared a little bit of this at MiiR Summit this fall, but just what happened in March? I mean, it was like instant.
Yeah, it was just surreal. I mean, it's, I feel like I'm still processing it. So, obviously what was so insane is that Seattle was the epicenter, right? We were the first to have, fatalities and real cases of COVID. It happened on a Sunday. And then by Wednesday, I had lost 80% of the business. Like it had evaporated. And what was particularly intense was this is my 23rd year in business. After 23 years, I'd finally decided to actually really invest in a larger facility. We had been growing, 25% a year over year from like 2015 on to 2019. We were projecting 20 million in sales in 2020. We just, crested over 17 million in 2019. So I went ahead and invested in doubling the space. For the first time, I was at 26,000 square feet. I'd gone from like 14,000, signed the lease like in January, was starting to get ready for the move in February. We purchased the equipment. All my money, everything was tied up. All the company's resources were all tied up into this move. And so COVID comes and I'm wiped out. I've lost 85% of the business. And you're just like numb. And what was really intense was not only was the business gone, but this was a pandemic. This was serious. This really at the moment felt like life and death. Truly, people were dying from it. And so you're just in such like disbelief and shock. And I'm thinking, my head was so like just spinning. I'm like, all right, I got to take a minute. So I checked into the Inn at the Market that Wednesday. I started the company in the market. I just had to get my head around what was going on. And I was sitting there and I was staring out the window. I was looking at the Pike Market sign. And I thought, first of all, I've had a lot of these employees of mine that have been with me for, some 15 plus years. Like I held their children when they were babies. And I have an obligation to them as much as anybody. I can't, there's no way I could put them on the street during a pandemic and have them not have income. There's no way. And I also know I'm not going to bet against myself. I'm not going to bet against this team. And I have to be able to look my children in the face and tell them, your mom left everything on the field. She tried. So that night I'm like, okay, I have enough money in my savings. If I move everything I have in my savings, all my money back into the company, I can shore up 3 weeks of payroll. I can keep the team together for 3 weeks. And if I can just give myself a little bit of a runway, I'm going to have to figure this out because I'm going to keep the doors open. I made the commitment. I'm going to stay open. And I also really believed, like, what do? We feed people. This is our job. And this is going to be a moment for us to show up in a different way. So, I called a company meeting the next day. I pulled everybody out in the parking lot and I said, all right, we're going to keep the doors open here. We're going to stay and we're going to stay open. But I need everybody to do a gut check because this is going to be a tricky time and this is going to be a scary business. And I don't know what it looks like. So you need to really think what makes sense for you, for your family. If you want to stay, then I want you to be here and I'm going to do whatever I can to keep you. If you need to shelter in place or you want to go on unemployment, we can do layoffs. I mean, just think through what makes sense because you just got to, you need to decide. And then, the majority of the team was like, we're in, we want to do this. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't have a plan.
You're like, I was hoping half of you would be like, I'm just going to go.
I thought everybody clap. That's great. Okay, well, we're going to just chill and God bless, have fun, but everyone's like, no, we want to do this. And I said, all right, well, if we're going to do this, then the next thing we need to do is we're going to have to pivot. Like, this is going to be tricky. And, we are going to be moving, we're going to move from feeding, the sort of, the business professionals in this city to really feeding our community. So that's how we're going to kind of show up, and we're going to do what we can to help during this time. I do want everyone to look back. I want you to be able to tell your kids or your grandkids, like, what did you do in COVID, and feel like you did something purposeful. So, and then I went back in the office and I had no plan. No plan. And you can't think your way through this. At least I couldn't. I mean, there's no playbook. I've said it before, we're entrepreneurs. We will always take bullets for our company. We always do. And then you just figure it out. But this was like being on a firing line, like firing squad. I mean, there were so many bullet holes. It's like, you don't even know how to stop the bleeding anywhere. And so I couldn't think through it. I'm like, I'm literally going to shut my eyes and go with my gut. I'm just going to move with my gut because that's the only thing that it can lead me anywhere. And then I begged, I borrowed, any opportunity. Like the PPP was a lifesaver. Our clients were amazing. Amazon was incredible. We had, we had like 10 cafes on their campus, and they're like, "You guys gonna be okay?" They called. I mean, they were like the client that called like on that Wednesday. They're like, "You guys gonna be okay?" I'm like, that we're not sure of, but we are going to stay open. And I said, and if you guys, if there's any community work we can do, if there's anything, I said, listen, my drivers, they'll drive for, Amazon Prime. We can prepare food for Amazon Go. Anything you need. You've been an incredible client of ours. Anything you need, we just want to be working. And they were amazing. They're like, listen, you got a lot of employees that work on our campus. Why don't for the next few weeks, we'll take care of their payroll for you. You focus on the rest of your team. And I was like, that was the first time I broke down, and I was like, to have like an international client like that, actually like try and take care of some of your team members when you don't have the resources to do it, even just a few of them. It was like you felt like you really had somebody that believed in you and was there to kind of help. And I'm like, we're going to do anything and everything we can. And thank you. And then a week later they called because I was like, any project, I just want this team together. I got to keep this team together. We'll do anything. So the next week they call and they're like, hey, the housing authority called and we've got 3,000 low-income elderly folks who are sheltering in place in some of the low-income housing programs around the city. They can't get to the food banks. Can you feed them? I'm like, absolutely, I can feed them. 100% I can feed them. And they're like, listen, there's really no budget here, okay? But this is what you got, and, can you do it? So we're basically shifting into, I just want to keep the team together, and fine, we'll do anything. And so then I said, well, do you care what I put in the boxes? And they're like, no, but you don't really have a budget. I'm like, let me worry about that. Don't you worry about that. Then I'm calling Mario at Mondo's Meats. I'm like, hey, what have you got? He's like, girl, I have so much stuff. He's like, because all the steakhouses have closed down. I have like insane beef tenderloin. I can give it to you at cost. He's like, I don't know what to do with it. You're calling like Pacific Fish. They're like, we have 600 pounds of salmon. We have nowhere to move it. It's yours. It's on the docks. You got to pick it up from the docks, right? Because what I wanted to do was like, I wanted these elderly folks to know that they were a big deal. I didn't want them to just get a turkey sandwich. I wanted them to have really beautiful food and, Borakinis, like Donnie Borakinis. I'm like, what do you got? And everybody, and these are all generational businesses, Merlinos, everybody came together to feed those guys, and everybody gave us stuff. Everybody's like, let's make it beautiful for them, because we couldn't even see our own parents. And it was a way to like feed, everybody else's parents at a time when you really couldn't see your own. And the notes that I got from, these folks like kept me through the first couple of months. It was the most beautiful project we worked on, and it was really powerful. And then, so we did, so I think 200,000 meals for them over, I think, a 3-month period. And then the Seattle School District found out about all of it. And so then they called, and then Fair Start called, which is when I got to connect with Angela Dunleavy, who is the CEO of Fair Start, who I've always admired and adored. And she and I started working together she called me, she's like, oh my gosh, we've been working with the Seattle School District to feed the children that have been on assisted meal programs, but those meal programs are gone now. So we're jumping in, but Alissa, I can't do it all. I'm like, I got you. I can do it. I can do it too. Let's do it together. We got it. And so between the two of us, I think we were producing 8,000 meals for children and their families every day. And then the food banks were like, can you help us? So we're like, yes, we can help you. And then the farmers called, and the farmers are like, hey, we heard you guys are producing, and you're still in business, and you're, helping the community. And we heard from the food banks. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So what do you got? They're like, listen, can we bring some produce to you? Because it's rotting on the fields. I mean, all the restaurants are closed. Like, can we just move product to you, or produce? I'm like, of course you can. Yes, please. We can process it. No problem. Yeah. So fast forward 2 days later, my chef calls me. He's like, Alissa, you better get down here now. He's like, what did you do? I'm like, what did I do? He's like, are you on your way? I'm like, yeah, I'm on my way. What are you talking about? I get there. I'm like, uh-oh, what have I done? Huge semis showed up of potatoes, onions, we had apples. It was nuts. We had something like 100,000 pounds of produce show up. Oh, we had huge walk-in rooms, just packed to the gills, right? And so like, I'm like, oh crap. And so he's, the chef's like calling Cisco. He's like, get us a freezer truck now. I need a freezer semi. I need 2 freezer semis in our bays right now. We are going to be processing the crap out of food for the next 2 weeks. I need to freeze it and get it to the food banks. I mean, it was crazy. And the team was spectacular, and because we get product from, anybody who had anything, you never knew what we were going to be producing, but it was an incredible time. Yeah, it was crazy, but it was also scary because I was responsible for, making sure everybody was safe. And I mean, there's so many sleepless nights because, I loved the work we were doing, and I believed in everything and the team, but I was also absolutely fucking terrified. Excuse my French, but I was terrified because I also knew I had a lot of employees that were, even though we were an essential service, they were also living with extended families. They were also, essential workers. And I didn't know what any of those environments looked like. And so I knew that it was a matter of time before COVID would breach our walls. I just knew. And it was very scary. And so how do you keep your team safe? And how do you make sure that you don't have an outbreak or some kind of an event? And it was just the most intense time, because you want to show up, you want to feed the community, but priorities, you've got to keep your employees safe. And so everybody committed to sheltering in place outside of work. I'm like, if we're working, you guys have to stay safe. We have to stay safe. So it was intense, really intense.
Gosh, you're such a legend.
I know. I mean, I'm speechless for so much of that. Like, you were just all people and all service.
And how many meals? Wasn't it?
It was over 1 million. When it was all said and done. When it was all said and done, it was just over 1 million meals to the community. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Like, what sort of a leader were you like in that time? Did you feel like you had to keep your composure and maybe put on a front at times for your people? Or were you pretty, I don't know, guard down, like, I don't know the answers and I don't know what a month from now looks like?
You know, it's interesting. I had to be more of the first part because I couldn't instill any more fear in anybody. I couldn't say like, I don't know if we live to see another day. I had to tell them like, we got this. I myself, I'm like, whoa, this is going to be tough. But I needed everybody to just feel as supported and, you know, like comfortable as they could be. I didn't have answers, but I needed to, and I was back to working 60 hours a week, right? There's no way. I mean, the minute COVID hit, I'm like, I will be in there with this team every day, you know, because they need to know that I know we have a safe environment. I believe in what we're doing and we are in crisis. And so I will be there every day alongside them. We will work together and we got this. We got this. And the other thing that was interesting, because when COVID first hit, I remembered like my employees would look at me and I'm like, why are they looking at me like that? Like, I don't understand. What does this look? And then I realized, like, it's fear. This look is fear. I'm like, oh boy. And so that's when I started just smiling. Yeah, I'd hug them. I'd hug everybody. You know, I just smile. I'm like, we're okay. It's going to be all right, you know? Yeah. Because it's scary. It was a scary, scary business. And I think that you had to keep as much calm as you could, but I was pretty tenacious. I mean, I think working for me was for the leadership was rough because I was like, get it, hit it, get it, hit it, get it. Because we have, 150 people on our floor who are counting on us to figure this out. And we have got to take this company to victory, So it was a lot. It was intense.
Would you say you redefined success in a new way during that time?
Definitely. I think, one of the things that came from it was, first of all, you can never be too humble, and I think the nonprofit work that we did was so powerful that I think we also recognized that this just has to be a part of our P&L. Like this just has to be a part of how we operate our business. And so, we now have like 7 of our box lunches where proceeds are donated towards different local nonprofits. And we'd always had 2 or 3 of those box lunches pre-COVID that were giving boxes where proceeds went back to nonprofits. Now we've extended it to 7. We'll probably at some point have all of our box lunches associated with different nonprofits.
Oh, your tenacity is inspiring. So good.
I know.
So you just never know how life shifts and turns,
Yeah.
I mean, that first part of COVID, the company was broke. I was broke. Everything I had was shoring up payroll. I mean, it was insane. It just, you never know where life moves you. But I do think if you just never give up and you just, I think it's so important to put your energy where you want to go. And that's actually a lesson I learned from my mom. I have, almost bankrupt Gourmondo a couple times. We're going to call them, learning opportunities, but,
What good entrepreneur hasn't?
I know, And so in 2006, I really blew it. I was like $1 million in sales. I had this incredible opportunity to sort of partner with a corporation and operate 3 cafes on their corporate campuses. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like a no-brainer. I'm so excited. I can't even stand it. Sign us up. Yes. So first lesson, don't make decisions based on just excitement and emotion. Like you probably should really look at the numbers, really get under the hood. But I was so confident. I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. So long story short, I didn't know what I didn't know. I was basically doubling the size of the business more or less overnight, and we got way overextended. And I'm sure it's the same for any small business. But in food, you're in the business of nickels and dimes, right? Inventory is intense, and so when things start falling apart, they go fast, So we'd hired a bunch of people, we had inventoried these cafes. we weren't getting the sales volume that we thought. It was just chaos, right? It was a huge struggle. Lots of lessons learned. We didn't really understand our audience that well. So long story short, within 3 months, I mean, we had bled out all of our cash. And my bookkeeper comes in and she walks into my office and she's crying. I'm like, bookkeepers don't cry. I mean, they're not emotional. The chefs will, particularly the sous chefs, but never the finance people. They're not criers, And so she's crying. Like, why are you crying? What happened? I thought maybe something happened to one of her kids. And she's like, we're broke. I'm like, what do you mean we're broke? And she's like, I can't pay any bills. We have no money. I'm like, when did this happen? She's like, it's just happened so fast. It's just like, it's all gone. I'm like, what do you mean it's all gone? I'm like, what? And she's like, I can't. She's like, nobody's, we haven't been able to pay our vendors in like almost 3 months. I'm like, but we only just launched this 3 months ago. She's like, I know, but we used all the cash on payroll, all the additional bodies and all the additional inventory. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And she's like, yeah, it's all COD. Like I have to write checks for them or they won't deliver and I don't have any money. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, okay, okay, fine. Just let me think about it, right? Just let me think. And so
my palms are sweaty just listening to it.
I was like, holy crap. And at this point I had 50 employees, right? Some of them are still with me today, right? But I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been doing this for 10 years. I got 50 employees and and I'm like, I blew it. This is me. Like, it's not her fault. It's my fault. I way extended. I wasn't thoughtful about managing the money or looking at the budgets. I just wrote checks, signed us up for all this stuff. I didn't even understand the demographics that we were going into for our customer base. Oh my God. And so, that night I'm totally wrecked. I'm super ashamed. I'm just like devastated, right? I'm like, I'm losing my business. She's like, you need to look at bankruptcy. You need to start talking to somebody about it. Oh, I think we're done. And so I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I called my mom. That's what I did, And so, when I called her and I was like, hey mom, I screwed up. Like I'm going to lose this business. I got too big too fast. I didn't pay attention and I'm going to lose it. I'm going to go bankrupt. I can't believe I screwed it up. She's like, oh my God, Alyssa, shut up. And I was like, it's not okay, mom. That's rude. It's not nice. It's not rude. It's very rude. It's not nice. It's not helpful. I'm like, are you watching a show? Are you not listening to me? She's like, no, I'm listening to you. And I'm going to tell you again, you got to shut up. I'm like, I don't get it. She's like, listen, oh my God, Alyssa, we're entrepreneurs. This is what we do. We play Vegas. Okay. You're going to make bets. Not all of them are going to pay off. And that's okay. And it's important because, this will happen again. And it might be the economy. It might be a competitor. It might not be that you made a dumb mistake and you did make a dumb mistake. And like, we got that. So that's fine. Move on. And she's like, but it's not the mistake that defines you. It's how you recover. So promise me, shift your energy. Start thinking about how you're going to fix this rather than spend all your energy on what's been done. And I think for me, it was a really important lesson in business. And I think that would be the thing I would always kind of come back to. And I think even through COVID, I'm like, I have to put my energy where I want this company to go. I have to will it there. I have to think that way. And it's a great Einstein quote that basically says, it's physics. Where you put your energy is where your momentum takes you. And I learned that, time and time again. And we lived to see another day. Back in 2006, I shifted my mind and okay, how am I going to fix it? How am I going to fix it? I learned a lot. We came back. That's now one of the largest growing divisions of the company. It's a very successful division, corporate dining. But you got to be willing to learn.
Did you just will the energy for more money in your account?
So then I called my dad. Well, and my dad, he's Finnish. He's like salt of the earth. He's the kindest, most honest dude ever. He's like, you need to be totally transparent. You need to call all of your vendors and you need to tell them you can't pay them, but you will pay them, because we were kind of juking and jiving. We didn't want anybody to know that we were broke, right? We're like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. We'll get you a check next week. I'm like, yeah. Don't worry. Well, they're like, you're messing with us. Forget it. We're not going to send you anything. And so, I took his advice and I was like, got away from the fact that I was embarrassed and, oh my God, don't worry, we're all fine. And I called, and I remember calling Ron Rosella, who I loved, the kingpin of produce back in the day. He was the best. And I called Ron. I said, Ron, it's Alissa. Hey, I got to tell you, I know I owe you. I owe you like 3 months worth of, invoices and bills. And I can't pay you, but I can pay you a little bit. And I've been here 10 years. I promise you I'm going to be here another 10 years. If you can give me a little bit of time, I got this. And he's like, all right, Alissa, I don't like it one bit, but I got to tell you, give it to me straight. I'm going to give you 3 more months. You got this. Now go get it right. And I was like, oh, love you, Ron Rosella.
Oh my gosh.
And he was
too.
amazing.
The kingpin of produce.
And he was just old school Seattle. I mean, that dude single-handedly kept half of these restaurants afloat through like the recession stuff, because he would give credit, he would give, some grace. And he was amazing. He never called me. He's like, just keep the checks coming. Even if it's $100 a week, just keep them coming. Yeah. Where the other vendors. And so once again, it's about relationships. You know?
Well, and you, again, like ego, you laid down your ego to have that conversation.
Yeah. I think that's actually really important, because trust is also defines relationships, and it builds relationships. You can't have a relationship without trust. And so I think, and once you have trust, people will kind of do anything for each other, and it goes both ways. So
younger entrepreneurs who ask for advice, I constantly tell them, surround yourself with other entrepreneurs who can encourage you through the tough times, who have been through those moments of like, oh, I'm broke. Like I can't get through this, because it'll probably happen. And you've definitely been there for me, and I appreciate it. And you're so inspiring. Well, Alissa, it's been great chatting. What's next for you?
Well, actually, we've got a lot of huge projects coming up in 2024 awesome. That I'm really excited about. So we're expanding the cafe division, and we've got the most spectacular culinarian team we've ever had. I mean, the chefs are just really, really like amazing. They're just incredible. So we're very lucky.
Well, Alissa, you're such an inspiration. I love being your friend and support each other.
You guys are the best. And back at you. I love what you guys are doing, and it's impressive. It's also very inspiring.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Well, thanks for being on the show today.
That's Alissa Leinonen, founder and owner of the Seattle-based catering company Gourmondo. Visit Gourmondo, GOURMONDO.com to book them for your next event. And don't forget to follow them on social media at Gourmondo Co. Thank you for tuning in to the MiiR X Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, where we'll continue to explore the stories and brilliance behind business leaders, creators, and changemakers that are shaping our world. Until next time.